hate getting stuck at a boat ramp. Can't get my outboard started. It's embarrassing. Everybody's sitting around staring at you, waiting on you to get out of the way. Here are the top 10 reasons why outboards don't start. Number 10, probably 95% of starting issues have to do with the dirty carb. There's two small little jets in the carburetor that vaporize the gas, so they can be used by the motor and be ignited by the spark plug. If there's contamination in those jets, it's going to be extremely hard to start your outboard. You got to clean it, you got to tear it down, take the jets out, soak them in carb cleaner. Some things that you can do to prevent a dirty carb is never use gas with ethanol. It breaks down, it attracts water, it can cause corrosion in your carburetor and can just gum it up and cause a lot of issues. Number 9, your fuel filter. If your fuel filter is clogged up, it's going to prevent gas from flowing from your fuel tank to your carburetor, and that's going to cause you starting issues and overall performance issues. They're super cheap, change them out every couple of years. You can take it off, look in there to see if there's any contamination. Number 8. Fuel pump is basically a diaphragm that pumps in and out, and what that does is it takes gas from your fuel tank, pumps it up into your carburetor. Take off the cover, look at the diaphragm. It should be kind of soft, shouldn't be any cracks in it. Number 7, your system could be losing prime in between trips. Gas can flow through your fuel lines from the inlet of your carburetor back into your fuel tank. What that means is none of the gas lines have fuel in it when you start on your next trip. There is a check valve in the fuel pump, but when the motor is not running, that fuel pump's not moving. It needs that movement to create watertight seals within the check valves.
That's how high the gas inlet is to the carb relative to the gas tank. You don't get any gravity feed of your gas to your carb when you first start. The first pulls when you're using an internal tank, you're having to cycle the gas pump, the fuel pump, to get everything primed, especially if your gas tank's not all the way full. If you're starting here, you're backflowing into your tank. I use my external tank to prime everything before I leave. Priming squeezes, it primes everything. It starts on the second pull every time now because I've got gas in this whole system and I'm not having to cycle the fuel pump to prime everything.
Number 6, you could have bad gas. If your gas sits around and starts to separate, breaks down to its components, and I use a fuel stabilizer which will stabilize the fuel for 12 months. Number 5, if you're using an external tank, these new tanks are sealed. They do not exhaust out into the atmosphere thanks to the EPA. So they don't want gas fumes coming out of gas tanks. So a sealed fuel tank means that if you're out on a hot day, pressure could build up in that tank. It doesn't exhaust to the atmosphere like older tanks do. So it builds up pressure and it pushes too much gas into your system, causing your system to flood. Look at getting a fuel demand valve, and that will prevent that issue. You could have a bad spark plug. There is a life expectancy to a spark plug. So if you have a bad spark plug, you're not going to start your motor. You have to have fuel, you have to have spark, you have to have air, and you have to have good compression for your outboard to start. If you have a bad spark plug, you're not going to get spark. Number 3, you could have a blocked fuel line or a kinked fuel line. Once again, that is going to prevent fuel from flowing through your system to your carburetor. If you're using an external tank, those gray fuel lines are horrible. They start to break down, degrade, they'll get clogged up, they'll clog up your fuel filter. So if you start having issues seeing gunk in your fuel filter or clogging of your fuel lines with black pieces of rubber, look at upgrading your fuel lines from your external tank to your motor with automotive grade fuel lines. You can find them at AutoZone, you can get them on Amazon, they're super cheap. Number 2, you could have bad compression. It's not something that I've ran into, it's a little bit more advanced. That means there's some major problems with your motor, but you can get a very cheap $20 compression tester from Harbor Freight to rule that one out. Number 1, flooding. Flooding can cause a lot of issues, a lot of headaches, a lot of frustrations. There's a lot of things that can cause flooding. You can try to pull too many times and get your spark plug saturated. Once your spark plug is wet with gas, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's not going to produce a strong spark. Is where the gas comes out into your carb bowl. There's a needle valve in there that's controlled by the float So as the gas level in the bowl fills up, the float goes up, and that needle valve stops the incoming flow of gas. If this doesn't work, it's gonna overflow. Your motor's gonna get too much gas, not enough oxygen. So the main reason is your float valve here, the needle valve, has dirt or contamination. And if it doesn't seat fully, you're gonna continuously get gas flowing into your car. And some bonus things that I do probably 5 times a season that are very, very stupid, to be honest with you. The first one is my gas valve is closed and I forget to open my gas valve if I'm using my internal tank. If I'm using my external tank, I forget to close my gas valve, my internal tank gas valve. If the gas valve for your internal tank is open and you use your external tank, it's just gonna push gas into your internal tank and you're not gonna get enough gas to your carburetor. Also, the gas vent on top of the gas cap could be closed. It's kind of like putting a straw down in water, putting your thumb over it, lifting it up, the water stays in the straw. That's why you gotta have your gas vent open on your internal gas tank cap. Emergency lanyard has to be in position. If your emergency lanyard is not seated all the way or is pulled out, that emergency circuit is going to prevent your spark plug from sparking and it's going to prevent you from starting your motor. You could have the throttle in the wrong position. There's a starting position on your tiller handle. It's got to be in the right position. And when you're cold starting, 99% of the time, you've got to have the choke out for it to cold start. You may not have your choke all the way out. I appreciate the view. As always, pick up your trash. I'm tired of seeing trash everywhere. You ruin it for everybody. Appreciate it. Have an amazing day. Thank you.